Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show, a podcast by SaaStock. Here we interview SaaS founders from around the world who've been there and done that, as they share the ins and outs of how they built their businesses, their operations, their path to securing investment, and more. Our mission with the podcast is to help you, the founder, learn how to scale your SaaS, maintain your well-being, and navigate the complexities of this ever-changing industry. I'm your host, Alex Theuma, and together we'll explore the good, the bad, and the ugly in the journey to SaaS success. Welcome back to the SaaS Revolution Show. I am your host, Alex Theuma, CEO, founder of SaaStock. Delighted to be joined today by Dan Uyemura, who is the CEO and co-founder of PushPress. How are you doing, Dan?
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you here.
Yeah, good to have you on the show for the first time. And whereabouts are you at the moment, Dan? I'm guessing somewhere in the US, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, Las Vegas area. So I live in Henderson, Nevada.
Very nice. What's it like living in Las Vegas? I mean, for somebody that only knows a little bit about the US, I've been to Vegas a couple of times. You know, it's kind of, we go there for conferences, or you go there for, you know, a bit of fun, a nice holiday. But to live there, what's that like?
I think a lot of people assume everyone who lives in Vegas lives on the Strip. Like everyone's experience of Vegas is within like a 4-mile strip, not even a square radius, but a strip. But that would be like saying, you know, if you lived in Los Angeles, you lived on Hollywood Boulevard almost. So most of us live out in the suburbs. We go into the Strip if we want to have entertainment, dining, or more likely if our friends are in town. But for the most part, like, locals don't hang out on the Strip on the daily.
Yeah. Okay. I've never experienced the suburbs of Vegas, so I have to probably try that next time I'm out there and get a sense for that.
There's not a whole lot. It's like normal living. There's like grocery stores and fitness studios, and it's like normal living out there.
At my age, I don't mind normal living. living.
Yeah.
So Dan, like I always start the show, we want to kind of get to know the guests, who they are as a person. So tell me a little bit about who is Dan Uyemura.
Oh, man. So I guess I could classify myself as a lifelong entrepreneur at heart. I had paper routes as a kid where you're basically like a little mini businessman at 12, had lemonade stands, tried to open a pool hall in my Westwood community during college. So all my whole life, I've always been trying to solve problems that I've seen other people and myself having, usually my own problems that try to solve when I realize other people have it too. That kind of transcended into me becoming an engineer, like an internet developer. We had weird terms back then. We were called internet developers or database-driven developers way back in the early 2000s because it was like the most entrepreneurial place I can go. Like I just taught myself how to code, started coding stuff, and ended up getting hired coding, became a coder. And so that's kind of my background. Then at some point in time, I burned out sitting at a desk coding all day long, generally speaking, for a bunch of things that I didn't really believe in. I was just coding for money, and opened a gym because I have always identified as a sports fitness person. Mm-hmm. And when I opened a gym, that became the moment of clarity where I realized like the gym space needs software written and developed by somebody who's from the gym space and is defending the gym space. And so that's what I did. Now I am, 12 or 13 years later, here we are.
Okay. So I guess it's a segue because I was going to ask of like, how do you go from, opening a gym to getting in SaaS? But I guess as you had your own gym, you noticed that there was a problem that you didn't have the adequate software to run it.
Yeah. And it was, I think most business is kind of a combination of like right place, right time, as well as you've lined yourself up with the skill set to do it. So it was like, I had been building web stuff for over a decade. I opened a gym. It was right at the kind of the beginning of SaaS. So this was like in 2010 and cloud-based software was becoming like the norm. So I did nothing but build cloud-based software. So it was kind of like right place, right time at the perfect moment. There was a big incumbent in the space who really wasn't serving the needs. Like as you moved away from their ICP, their needs weren't being met. So there's all these wedges that could be formed. And that's kind of just what we did. All of these like modern SaaS terms, I didn't know at the time. I just realized there's a demand for the gym type that I am that is not being filled. I'm going to build it, so I didn't know what a wedge was back then.
Yeah. And what about then, like deciding from going to gym to SaaS? Like, so did you start to do this solo? Did you look for a co-founder? Did you say like, okay, like, do we need to kind of raise money for this? or, bootstrap it?
Yeah. So when we first started it, it was basically everyone who was involved in my gym, the first gym that I had opened. And we kind of whittled that down. It just so happened, like, I was in the tech space and I opened a gym with another guy who was in the tech space, who was like from the design world of tech. And a member of my first gym, his name is Brian, who was a banker or in the banking world. So it was this perfect combination of, and he owned his own SaaS company on the side as well.
Okay.
So it was like this kind of combination of like, I could code, Brian can code, had the experience of building a SaaS business at the time. And then Chris, the third co-founder, was a designer in the software world doing more enterprisey stuff. So he took care of the look and the feel. I took care of like the general coding, and Brian was also a coder too, could code too. We thought the opportunity was so big and obvious we would raise money right from the get-go. And the first 4 or 5 years of PushPress was an intermittent phase of us getting laughed out of investor rooms. So it was a long phase of like us really believing this was something investable to us believing no one would ever invest in it, and we just had to do it ourselves. But we were getting enough traction in the open market that we realized like we could do this ourselves. So that's kind of what it was. So like for founders out there who are having a hard time raising, the biggest thing I realized when I first started PushPress was I thought investors were kind of like the people who would go to Vegas and just throw money at slot machines and throw money at roulettes and just like let it ride on black and let's see what happens. It's far from it's the opposite. It's like they are so risk adverse, even in the venture world, that either they need to see, enough product market fit and conviction to make the leap and no one wants to be the first one on a bad bet, basically. So that's why there's this whole, like, once you get a little, like one investor in, 10 will follow, but getting that first investor is really hard. So that was our experience. Like we didn't know in the early days how to pitch, so winning that first investor was hard. But after about a decade of building enough conviction in our business, I started going into pitches like, I don't really need your money, but if you want to invest, you can go ahead because I already know we've got a winning business. And I think that confidence landed us our first investor.
Awesome. And so can you share then a little bit of data around the company? So you started in 2010. You have, as you shared, raised some venture capital. What does the company look like today in terms of the size of the company, revenue, how much we've raised, how many people, so on and so forth?
Yeah, to date. So size of company in terms of headcount?
Yeah, headcount, also revenue, if you're happy to share.
Yeah. So headcount, we're around 80, high 70s, if you count like United States, Canada, kind of like that. We have a pretty big team offshore in the Philippines that does implementation work for us, and that brings us closer to 100. Revenue, we're at 13.5 million ARR at this point. We've raised to date about 12.5 million. But again, we've done that over 11 years now. Okay. So a lot of the growth and a lot of the investment was in the last 4 years.
And so let's just go back to maybe getting to product market fit. Your first, obviously, you built this, I guess, because you identified the problem that you had with the incumbent and with what your gym needed. So was your gym, were you your first customer?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then how did you then get your first 10 customers?
It's a really good question. Yeah, so my gym was the first customer. Ironically enough, we landed our second customer probably the day after my gym. So that kind of set us off on like, oh, this is gonna be easy, but it wasn't, because that person just happened to find us on social media and was the archetype of like massive early adopter, willing to take a shot on the new guy, and just connected with us personally. I don't remember the trajectory at this point for the first 10 customers, but I do know like there is a massive slog, like getting out of like the first 10, the first 50, the first 100. It's like you are going to hand-to-hand combat on every single gym or logo. And as the founder, you're doing everything you can to win that deal, and you're not going to be adequate. Like you're not going to solve all their needs, and you're going to start making promises, right? That's just typical. It's hard. It's really hard. Like I'm not going to lie. There is this weird point of brand building and inertia where it does become much easier. But yeah, that first, depending on the industry you're in, 100 or so is like just straight hand-to-hand combat, bloody. It was easier for us because we were in the space. So I was a gym owner and I was a technologist. So one thing that a lot of gym owners needed help on was technology. This is the time when landing pages were becoming a thing and web-based transactions were a thing. And there was this transition around 2010. And so I kind of was just in Facebook groups and Reddit groups and stuff like that, helping gym owners understand, like, this is why you need a landing page. This is why you need to track UTMs. This is how you want to understand the data that's coming through your funnel, or just even like, what is a funnel, right? Like just trying to explain to gym owners, like, well, what are we doing here? And so I kind of built a little bit of, I guess, a presence in the online communities of like, let me help you with what you're doing technology-wise. And I've just leaned into that, and we've become a help first company. So it's like, any way we can help a gym figure out what they need to do, we'll do that first. And then if they want to work with us, it comes behind all of that. I think that's a pretty good way for any founder to look at how they're going to get their first 100 customers.
100%. And you mentioned obviously the 3 co-founders, and I think you said you all had coding skills, right? How did you decide that you would be the CEO? And assuming that you were the CEO role, that then you were the one that was going out there to do the sales, right?
Super good question. Yeah. I'm the last of the 3 to take the CEO. We've all done it.
Okay.
So I think it was I'll be honest, like in the early days, it was a game of like, I don't think anyone really wanted to do it because we didn't really know what it meant, and it's the title.
Yeah.
And so everybody has tried being the CEO. I think it just stuck with me, and probably I'm the most natural fit to be the CEO that we need at PushPress, because even though I consider myself mostly an introvert and somebody who wants to just sit in my room by myself and do what I have to do, being a CEO, the CEO that PushPress needed was an outfacing, stand on a soapbox and talk to the world CEO. And of the 3 founders, I'm actually probably the most equipped to do that.
And you mentioned, and obviously if my rudimentary maths is correct, then that you started in 2010, you raised capital, or all of the capital you raised is in the last 4 years, right? So you probably raised just before or during like COVID, when that was kind of first breaking out. What do you think was the inflection point then for 2020 to investors then becoming interested in PushPress?
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, this goes back to like a lot of business is out of your control, and some of it is, right? So COVID hit because at the time, I think we were the only, if not one of a couple gym software solutions who actually were built by gym owners who gave a damn about gym owners. When COVID hit, we basically just circled the wagons and did everything we could to help the entire world of gym owners. That ultimately really, and we had just launched a free product. There were no other gym management platform at the time had a free software. And then I was like, I think free is going to be a thing in SaaS. Everyone's going to have a free product eventually. Let's just do it. So we launched a free product November 2019. COVID hits March 2020. We rally around our customers. We start putting out we have bankers on how to get loans. We have, we start doing seminars on how to get through this together, which ultimately, unbeknownst to us, or, it wasn't the attention, but it became a massive brand awareness moment. This was also during the time of free money, basically, right? When the free money started to hit, which we didn't know was going to happen. Again, it was like luck kind of created. And so towards the middle of COVID, an investor that I had literally been denied 3 times previous, he had sent me away 3 times with, sounds good, but we're not interested, called me up and said, hey, we were actually raising a little safe round that was getting a little bit of traction. And he said, hey, I heard you're raising a safe from one of my friends. Let me just give you a full seed. He came to me. And so that's just one of those interesting things. And it's because we showed growth during COVID where everyone thought gyms were dying and we were showing growth. So it's that's the conviction point that got the first investor over the edge. I had danced around him long enough. He had seen us grow over the 4 or 5 years of pitching. Yeah. And then finally through COVID, we did what he didn't think was possible. So he was like, okay, just take my money and let's go. Let's build it.
And what was that? What was the thing that was not possible? Because as you say, at that moment in time, gyms were shut down, right? And yet, yes, money was free in general. SaaS started, I think most SaaS was benefiting and booming because, people were working remotely. So how did you solve for that your software is enabling gyms, ultimately to run the gym, right? Like,
I think the reason is because Peloton and them took the headlines, and you know, the 24-hour fitness and the people we think of and Equinoxes of the world were shutting down and having hard times. What people didn't realize is in my neck of the woods, community-driven fitness, where people consider it their third space, it's almost like church for people. They were refusing to not come. So it became, the joke in my world was, it was basically speakeasy fitness, where it was like we would put newspaper up on the windows, we would say we're closed, and people would come in the back door and still get their workout on. So while it definitely, like you can look at the charts of like the revenue our gyms made and stuff, it definitely affected it.
Yeah.
But I don't think to the tune that everyone expected or thought from the outside world. Like our gyms were still holding on okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I think it was just the juxtaposition of like, oh, Peloton's crushing and Equinox is getting crushed.
Yeah.
Why are you growing still? And it was because our gyms are still being patronized, just in a hidden way.
Maybe I should have, because I was thinking, like, given that you've got a SaaS product, and obviously during COVID, SaaS was doing pretty well, but gyms were obviously hard hit. You know, so you were in a good industry from the SaaS perspective, serving a bad industry, right? And then on my side, my story, obviously, like SaaStock, we're a SaaS community for founders. We're running SaaS conferences, large mass gatherings. So we were serving a good industry, but in a bad industry where we couldn't do mass gatherings. So just thinking there that maybe I could have done a speakeasy SaaStock and see how that went. But
you probably could have, because there's probably some founders who were like trying to figure it out, who needed the help.
Yeah,
like I would have been in that bucket at that time, right in 2020.
Yeah. Well, we did. Like I spoke to lots of founders, obviously, during that time, and everybody was feeling lonely, disconnected, couldn't get together in person. And,
yes.
That, like, whilst we were doing virtual events, it just wasn't the same, right? So fast forward to today, you're doing 30 million ARR. What could you highlight as maybe some of the key drivers, maybe sort of 3 key drivers that have enabled you to scale to the revenue that you're at today?
So, and again, this kind of goes back to like when we started this business, we had no inkling of this idea, but really, and nowadays it's common knowledge. So, and we built into it we got pulled into the idea of the layer cake in SaaS, right? So our customers, we just listened to our customers who were so connected to them. They wanted more and more from us. So we started building more and more. But I think what is a predecessor to that is we had such a high trust quotient with our clients. And so to me now, the formula for vertical SaaS specifically in my realm, but probably works for all SaaS, is you have to build trust before anything, trust before layer cake, but trust plus additional products that actually serve a need that customers want. Like, you're not just solving problems to solve problems, but you're solving needs, turns into exponential growth. But the trust factor is, I think, what a lot of people skip. They just think like, we'll build a product and we'll build more products and we'll sell more products. But when you get to the point, like I have customers, like we have quotes from customers that literally said like, whatever you build, I will buy. Like when you reach that type of customer trust, you've earned the right to solve all of their problems. And so that's how we approach this is how we approach this business, is like trust comes first. NPS means everything. CSAT means everything first. Then we think about the other products we can start to help them in.
Understood. And as you mentioned, like the hand-to-hand combat, in the early days, and that being essential, as you're at the stage that you're at now, how are you, like what is your go-to-market? How are you acquiring new customers, new gyms to come and use your software?
Yeah, so probably the unpopular / unsexy answer is it's still somewhat hand-to-hand combat. We're just doing it at a bigger scale. And also, there is no one silver bullet in terms of go-to-market. So like we have to attend events, we have to do SEO work, we have to write blog posts, we have to help hold educational webinars. I have to have a personal brand that's out there going. Like there are probably 8 different channels that we have to run simultaneously to some effect. And again, this builds the trust. So to me, everything centers on trust. So when someone enters our sales funnel, they should already be convinced that they want to buy, and it might be a timing or a let me try to disqualify this sale on their part, as opposed to like we're pulling in someone who doesn't really know us, who doesn't really care, and we're selling them a product. I think that just makes everything so much easier, but it requires a lot more investment and work. That's the motion we choose. Yeah.
you're obviously the original co-founder, but as you say, are the most recent CEO out of the three co-founders, and the one that is seemingly the best fit. How has your leadership style kind of changed then, I guess, as you move maybe from co-founder to CEO, and during the time that you've been CEO, like how have you like adapted and grown, and do you see your leadership style changing?
Yeah, 100% I do. And that was probably for me personally the biggest adjustment. So I went from literally doing almost everything for the company except anything financial. So I'm not good at books or spreadsheets or any of that, but marketing, sales, writing code, everything, customer support. In the early days, we did everything to, you slowly step away and away. And the key point of it is you have to hire people to do a role who are better at it than you, who can completely make you forget about that role. So like we hired a head of sales who became our CRO. And then once we did that, I don't have to worry about sales, marketing, or customer support at all ever anymore. Like that's just completely off my plate. Then, it's like then you slowly whittle it away. Like you get a head of product in, you get a head of engineering in who are like really, really good at building teams and doing that thing. Don't have to worry about that anymore. And now I've built myself back to the point of I can, for the most part, look at the forest and then talk to any one of them about the trees. You know what I mean? And get involved. I still stay closely connected to the product because I do have such a close connection with the customer, and actually I use gyms. I still am closely connected to gym owners. So like I'm probably their biggest, like I'm on them the most. But it is going to be a challenge for everyone listening who's like kind of in the early stages of the business. Like you get used to doing everything, and then you have to scale yourself back to like forcing yourself not to get involved. Like the more I get involved in things, the more mess usually gets created. One more point real quick that I think is important. What I think, like for what I didn't realize at first, took me 2 years to realize this, is when you get to that point where you have like layers of people and you have a CRO and you have a VP of customer success and then you have customer success people. If I ever talk to a customer success person and I say like, hey, what do you think about this? Why don't we do this? They interpret that as like, do this. So it's not like I got in this mess for a while where I'm like, what do you guys think of, like, just fact finding? What do you think about this? And they're like, okay, let me do it. And they just do it. And I'm like, no, because then it looks like you're skipping over layers of management and just being a brute force CEO, which will happen. So just be careful about that.
No, it's good. It's a good point. And I've definitely heard and seen that a lot. I was just thinking around I think you're, of course, totally right in terms of as a CEO, you've got to replace yourself from doing everything and, you mentioned hiring the CROs, so then stepping back from sales. But are you like 100% step back from sales, or are you still like, you've got key customers, key accounts, you're whining and dining, when the quarter's coming up, like, if you need to kind of hit the numbers, are you coming in? Like, what does that look like?
So I guess there's a couple different lenses to this answer. One, we sell to small businesses, and like the decision makers are the gym owner. It's like the sales motion is quick and it's very precision. So for the most part, like I don't have to hit a golf course with some executive somewhere to sell a big corporate deal yet. So I'm not really involved in that level. However, I do, like, gym owners will DM me. Like I have 7 DMs right now that came in this morning. They're sitting in my inbox right now. Like just random gym owners will DM me things. Sometimes I will help. Like, and sometimes it's I don't close to close. Like I firmly believe I want the right customers with us. And so a lot of times it'll be like, I'll just work with them to help qualify, like, are we the right business for them? And ironically, a lot of times when someone understands that you're not selling them, you're qualifying, they actually want to work with you more. So it becomes this game of they become more interested in working with you while I'm actually trying to tell people you're not a good fit sometimes, right? So I will help close logos that I specifically am attached to or want. I will help talk to gym owners, like, for our sales team or marketing team, but I don't have any specific role of like, it's time for the CEO to roll up his sleeves and go sell some accounts for us. Yeah.
And you mentioned that obviously you sell to SMBs. You're not on the golf course, or don't need to be for the for the big deals. And you said yet. Do you think you need to go like up market and start targeting some of the bigger gym chains to get to 100 million ARR?
Eventually, probably yes. But what I've learned, I'm the type of CEO who's we joke around and call it and like after coding, like and like I want this and that. It's never this or that. So I'm becoming better at saying like this is not on our roadmap right now. And corporate and international probably are just, the focus is not going to be there in any time in the short term. What I will do, and what I do is I get on stages at SMB conferences and I talk to them. I have keynotes and I will give speeches and I will make appearances there to make, and again, it's part of the trust building factor. Like I'm not up there pitching anything or selling anything. I'm just there to help them. And then it's attraction over promotion. Like I want them to come talk to us on their own accord. So
makes sense.
That's my role in the sales motion, I suppose.
Makes sense. Want to move into the quickish fire round now, Dan. So we'd love to know what one thing has moved the needle the most for you in your career.
Concept of leverage. I guess this doesn't apply to me. This applies to everybody. I didn't really have the formula or the mindset around this, but the more leverage you can create in a company, the more value you will get in return. And so this is why engineers get paid so much, why CEOs get paid so much, because like one decision from a CEO could be a $50 million output. One line of code for an engineer could run for the next 20 years, right? And that concept of leverage, if I was like to talk to 20-year-old Dan, I would just say, and I think I haphazardly found my way into this, but you can actually think about everything in terms of how do I how do I allow myself to create leverage for the company I work for, and then turn that leverage into leverage for myself, you know? And I tell my own team members, this is like, the more leverage you create, hey, if you come to me and I have a gun to my head to give you a raise because you created so much leverage, you're going to get it, like hands down. So
what about the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, I've received a lot. I'm kind of a scholar for learning. Man, that's a tough one to get on the fly. Best advice I ever got. I don't even know if I can answer that one on the fly. I consume advice and information probably a dozen times a day. I'll say this: our VC, our primary VC, that has they're Buffett fans, and they believe in like the hedgehog versus fox concept. I was just talking to someone about this morning, so it's top of mind. Just focus on customer value. Like, be a hedgehog. Go deep on what your customer needs. Think about inputs and outputs, right? So a lot of people focus on how much money do we make? And that's really the result of something else. Like, focus on the things you can control. So think about how do you quantify and turn into metrics customer value points? Because if you're delivering customer value, your right to earn revenue is given. So focus on the inputs, not the outputs, I would say.
Well, what about biggest failure you've made and lesson learned from that?
Oh man, biggest failure. So I failed a lot. I've failed at everything until now. Let's put it that way, including my own personal life. I've lost a home. I've had a divorce. I've barely graduated college. I failed 2 startups. I've been part of startups that my whole life to this point. Kind of grim to say this, but my whole life to this point has been a series of failures that turned. But I've never seen them that way, to be honest. Only in hindsight do I realize that. As long as you learn from the things you're doing. Every failure is a new door opened, right? In reality. Like I didn't mention this, but I actually raised money for a startup right out of college. It was called Mixture.com. It was basically MySpace 5 years too early or 8 years too early. We failed, like miserably, spectacularly with the .com bust, but I got a job building as an engineer for another community or, right out of that. So it was like, I didn't even have a chance to realize we failed before I was already hired for my next job. So it's like, just keep moving ahead, Yeah.
No, good stuff. What about hardest thing about building a SaaS company today? Competition.
It's got to be one. It's so much easier to build SaaS today than ever before. So it's like the competition end. Before it was just hard to build the SaaS. Now it's like, it's so much easier now. The competition's going to be nuts. And then also, you've got to deal with, I guess, companies like PushPress who are kind of right in the middle of, we are fast enough, well-funded enough, and far enough ahead where it's going to be hard to catch us, even with the easier thing. That being said, there's more and more, like what we've seen in software is there's more and more niches, there's more and more wedges. And, honestly, I believe every solution actually creates another problem. So it's like you just pay attention to what the problem is that's being created and you're okay. So,
and final one, what is the best, but also the worst thing about being an entrepreneur?
The best thing about it is really the ability to create value for other people, and that includes like your employees. Did you say also the worst thing?
Also the worst thing,
like not there, so they're different?
Yeah.
I guess, okay, if I'm going to have to frame it that way, it's like the ability to create an entity that can create value for the world and create value for the employees involved. The worst thing about it in that same exact lens would be the fact that not everyone can work for your company. So like every time we have a job opening, there's like 20 people I want to hire and we can only hire one. And the fact that the company, if you're growing it fast enough, will always won't outgrow everybody in the company, but will outgrow 80% of the people. So people that were great for the role and are great people that you love end up becoming eclipsed by the company because they're doing their job, they're making the company grow faster than they can keep up with themselves, and they can't stay with the company long term.
Yeah.
And I think getting people to understand that that's actually completely okay, because kind of like I said, one door closing is next door opening. Like they will land a way better job in a better position in a better place because of what they did. But a lot of people take it personally, like I have failed. And actually, like I try to get my team to understand, like if you succeed, you probably will get overrun by the company, myself included. Like I'm not excluded from that list. So it's a really hard, I think, thing for people to wrap their heads around.
Yep, no, I agree. And thanks for sharing. So Dan, we come to the end of the show. Thanks for being a guest today on the SaaS Revolution Show. If people want to reach out to you online, where's the best place that they can find you?
PushPress.com/Dan is a webpage we built that has like all my connection points. I try to put out reels every day that have just general business SaaS and, small business concepts. So all that has to be Instagram at Daniel-san, like the karate kid guy. Those are probably the two places, but pushpress.com/Dan would have like how to email me, how to follow me on social and some of my philosophies and stuff like that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out today to come on the SaaS Revolution Show, sharing with the SaaStock community. Thank you so much, Dan Uyemura, CEO and co-founder of PushPress.
Thank you. My pleasure. It's fun.